Well, I should say welcome back to the program. We're here with Matthew Clark, who's the Executive Director of the Johnson Creek Watershed Council, and the Volunteer and Outreach Coordinator, Amy Lodholz. Amy was on the program, a year or two ago, and so was Matt. They were on different programs talking about the Johnson Creek Watershed Council, what the wonderful things that they're doing, and some of the events that they're going to be putting on. Guess we should just start a little bit about what Johnson Creek Watershed Council is. It's kind of obvious what you're doing. You're working with Johnson Creek and as a watershed, not just as a creek, but just a little bit of what you folks are all about.
Well,
Either one of you, right?
we can take turns. So, the Johnson Creek Watershed Council is a local nonprofit. It's in the east side of the Portland metro region. Our office is located in Milwaukee, and we basically do improvement projects on Johnson Creek. We work to engage the community in volunteer activities and recreational events, and also to come and learn and explore Johnson Creek through educational events as well.
And so you have a lot of those, I take it.
We try, yeah. We do them throughout the year, regardless of the season. We this winter we'll have a twig workshop because all the leaves are gone, and then in the spring we'll do edible weed workshops. So education is just one of many activities that we're hosting.
Any medicinal?
Yes, as part of Johnson Creek Days.
Oh, all right. I'm jumping ahead there.
Yeah.
All right. And Matthew?
I would just add to what Amy said that we do a lot of restoration work, so both work in stream, in the habitat in stream. So an example would be installing logs to create habitat for salmon, doing a lot of streamside tree planting, both with volunteers, and our staff does a lot of that too. And one of the primary purposes of doing that is to have those trees grow up to shade Johnson Creek. Johnson Creek in the summer particularly is a lot of it is too hot for salmon, and so create the shade that creates the cool, clean water that salmon need. So we do a lot of that kind of habitat work, and we are increasingly doing a lot of scientific research and monitoring, including with citizens. So we get in the winter, this is something we'll probably talk about later on, a volunteer activity that we do, but we get people out looking for spawning coho salmon. So they're walking in Johnson Creek in November and December looking for spawning coho, which is pretty. Unfortunately, I've never seen one myself, but I hope every year, hope springs eternal that I'll be one of the people that actually gets to see one.
Well, they weren't there for a long time. They're just now coming back, right?
That's correct. Well, I guess I should say, to be accurate, they have not been documented for a long time. We can't for sure say they weren't there. We can say we didn't see them for years.
Not in any great number.
Yeah,
right?
certainly. And so it's exciting that we are seeing them now for the last several years during these spawning surveys. We have seen them, and then we have a lot of anecdotal evidence. People who call in, very credible people, say, hey, I saw a coho, and sometimes you see a carcass that you can call the State Fish and Wildlife guys up, and they come out and pick it up, and they say, "Yep, sure enough, it's
That's pretty credible.
Coho. Yeah. You can't argue with it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, you've mentioned that all the great things that you folks do, and it struck me that why did you need to do them? And it's because that area was just completely ignored and hammered for so long. I mean, was there industrial runoff and silt and all the different things that built up? And you said that you're planting trees, which means that it was clear cut right on down to the edge, and it warmed up the water, and so many of these different things that have been going on, and you're trying to remedy what has been done for the last 100 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Well, it still has, its challenges. The creek does, have problematic issues with stormwater, and as you mentioned, there are some erosion issues there. It does have pollution, and there are bacteria in Johnson Creek still, but not at the levels that they used to be. I think you can see through the restoration efforts that things have.
Sewage?
Several. There are septic systems that are near the creek that probably the septic, the sewage migrates through the septic system or through the ground and the groundwater. Mm-hmm. There are animals that produce, animals poop in the creek, And there are probably some, there are homeless populations next to the creek, so there probably is also some human waste that gets into the creek, directly. So those would be different sort of vectors that bring bacteria into the creek. A lot of it is, bird, beaver, animals, but also some human.
And that being said, there is still, I should mention, so much life in Johnson Creek. We have otter, beaver, blue heron, threatened red-legged frogs. We're just now beginning to discover, aside from the fish populations, what else is thriving and surviving in the Johnson Creek watershed. So although it has its challenges, I do want to point out too that it's doing well in a lot of ways as well.
Didn't we talk a couple years ago about there was crawdads or crabs or something?
It definitely has lots of crawdads. Yes.
Yeah, both. I think both native and non-native. So there's a native species of crawdad, and then some non-native. The other thing I would say about the bacteria is that there are ongoing efforts to sewer parts of the Johnson Creek watershed. So by sewer, I mean to bring in the sewer infrastructure and replace these failing septic systems that are part of what bring the bacteria in. So that's a really positive step, and hopefully we're going to see in terms of the reduction in those bacteria that are getting into the creek. So I think we're definitely moving in the right direction.
Sure. And there's also something I didn't think about before, but there's right there near 102nd and Foster, whatever, there's a lot of energy and money being put into flood control. And is that part of what you folks are doing, or are you just part of what is being done?
So that is a City of Portland. The Bureau of Environmental Services has done that project at 106th and Foster. That exactly right. So that's a flood control project. They created excavated a lot of floodplain next to Johnson Creek, so the floodwaters have a place to attenuate in the winter when floodwaters are running high. And then it also has additional habitat benefits. That's important for aquatic habitat as well. And that's a great project. I mean, that's really, if you have not, it sounds like you've seen it.
I live close and I've yet to park and walk through it. I'm ashamed of myself.
It has a great path, and it has some interpretive signs, and it's really a nice area. So we as a nonprofit, that's not our project. That's the city's project.
Seeing it now is a great time to see how a restoration project can change over time. All the plants are small and new. If you come there now and then 2 years from now, you'll see how different the landscape looks. So
yes,
it's a good time to visit.
Especially along the banks when you're putting in down for erosion control, because I imagine, like I mentioned earlier, erosion, but also farm runoff. Is that as big an issue as it has been in the past?
I'll let you answer that. We do have some
for the fertilizers. And
the upper watershed of Johnson Creek is a lot of farmlands and cattle ranches, but I don't know if it's any more of a significant factor than others.
Well, the agricultural runoff is an issue in Johnson Creek. The upper watershed, like Amy said, is agricultural tree nurseries. So the streamside tree planting is going to help address that. And we're doing a lot of work in the upper watershed, working with private landowners and some nurseries to address that. There are legacy pesticides, so from the 60s when we still used DDT. Those are still bound to the soil particles, particularly in the upper watershed, and so that still comes into Johnson Creek through erosion, soil erosion. So the way to address that is to address soil erosion and other sort of what would be called emerging contaminants, things that we are still sort of scientifically trying to get a handle on in terms of we just don't do the type of monitoring to know if they're present in our environment. Presumably they are, and we know that some, PAHs, which I don't have any idea what that stands for, like the actual chemical name but would be an example. And then, there are contaminants that come in from the urban parts of the watershed too. I mean, an example would be they've done studies I don't think in Oregon, but certainly in the Seattle area, showing that copper dust from brake pads of cars is getting into their salmon streams, and that is affecting the migrating behavior of salmon. So, the message that we get across is that everyone, rural or urban, everyone does have impacts on the watershed, and that we all, we're all modern humans, and we have cars and houses and lawns, and those all in their own way impact, the watershed. So in a positive way of thinking of that is that we all have things that we can do to improve it.
While we're mentioning the upper watershed, if the control room can put up the map, let the folks at home see exactly where we're talking about.
Sure. There we go. Boy, look at that.
Great. So Johnson Creek starts in farmlands in Boring, Oregon. It's 26 miles long. It flows through Boring, Gresham, and southeast Portland, and finally empties into the Willamette River in Milwaukee. So it's a 54 square mile watershed with many amenities and recreational opportunities there. But just so you guys have a visual of what part of Portland we're talking about.
Yeah, because I took off talking like everybody knows about it. Well, they may not, just because I happen to live nearby. So, but where does it empty into the Willamette?
There's a park called Milwaukee Riverfront Park that's just along McLaughlin Boulevard.
So is that near the sewage plant there?
It's just north of the sewage plant.
Good.
So
well, that means it's downriver then. So it's not
downriver on the Willamette.
Yeah.
So it's for orientation. It's another point of close by is the Selwood Bridge, which would be downstream about quarter to a half mile.
So it's in between the sewage plant and the Selwood Bridge.
And the Selwood Bridge, yeah.
Right, so
it's right where it's near Elk Rock Island is another point. It's downstream of Elk Rock Island, and then right where the Willamette actually curves, right before the Selwood Bridge.
All right.
There's
They put the map up behind us there.
Wow, it's pretty fancy.
Yeah,
I like that.
Brightens things up too.
There's a viewpoint at Milwaukee Riverfront Park that's just been built if you'd like to see the mouth of the creek opening into the Willamette. And we've had a large-scale in-stream habitat construction project there at that site as well. So there's plenty to see if people want to drive down to that spot.
I was going to ask about that because it seemed to me that 2 years ago one of your events was at the mouth of the river.
Right,
there.
we're still working there. We've had volunteer projects there, planting trees and continuing to build the canopy in the area. The log jams seem to be holding well. Collecting.
Is that purposely built log jam?
Right. Intact, meant to stay there, collect other woody debris, create pools and habitat for salmon.
Well, it seems like with a tremendous, since it's not dammed anywhere, you get tremendous floods, and anybody that lives in southeast Portland knows about that. And you put a log dam in the mouth of that, doesn't that kind of pile up a lot of debris over time?
So far, it seems to be working as it should. We haven't had major problems with backing up the water in any ways. It's awfully, things are flushing out as they should, although it's collecting.
When you design these projects to install logs, you don't do it in a densely populated where there are houses very close by. You need to be thoughtful and do it in a place where, because you can create local backup of water. You're not going to back water up with a single log. It's not going to back up water for a quarter mile or half mile. But it will locally back up water, and so that you want to be cognizant. And at the mouth of Johnson Creek, there's enough open space that you have the freedom to be able to do that without jeopardizing. Because we certainly don't. Very aware of and don't have any intention to jeopardize people's houses. That's not our MO. So.
That's where the science you were talking about comes in.
Yeah. So when we do these projects, we hire hydraulic engineers and restoration specialists who are looking at these projects very carefully, and they're the design is quite technical.
Because I know that through the years, people have done things they thought was working out really good for the environment, and they miss one little detail, and it turns out making things a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah.
And so, but I know that the Johnson Creek has been just to clean it up with the tires and all the crap that's been thrown in it over the years. It was a tremendous job. But now you're probably, hopefully, past that, and you're able to start doing to amend some of the problems.
We're still doing a trash cleanup every
Still,
year, but we're not seeing what we have been. The tires, like you mentioned, are gone from the stream. We're not seeing large items, that
Like cars.
plague the creek. Right. So we're
Radiator
effectively
box and,
getting
yeah.
less trash each year, and with no way to calculate it precisely, I did see less trash bags this year. So the ban on plastics hopefully is working for Johnson Creek.
I sure hope so. Well, people think about community and then they think about people. They don't think about river as a part of your community. And it definitely is a part of your community, even if you don't have anything to do with it in your life other than maybe driving over the bridge. It affects in maybe a tangential way, but it's a very important part of it. And it's really important to have folks like you, your organization, to get the scientists and to provide these services. But also, one of the things you provide is events where people can come in and find out what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we want to segue into that. I know I've got some information here, but we can just move ahead with that.
Sure.
Johnson Creek Days, actually, it's next on my list here. It was a series of 3 weekends or something a couple
right.
years ago, but now you telescoped it all into one weekend.
We did.
Is this the first year you did it on
We
one
did.
weekend?
We're condensing the activities over one weekend extravaganza. On Friday evening, we're going to start with a science talk, and that's going to be at 4th Street Brewing in Gresham.
That's Friday the
20th.
September 20th at 6 o'clock, open to the public.
This is all on your website as well.
Yes,
All right.
yes. Or folks can call our office to get details. And the science talk is going to be led by Watershed Council staffer Robin Jenkinson. She's going to be using Google Flyover to review Johnson Creek Watershed as a whole, talking about various restoration projects. So I'm looking forward to it. If thinking drinks are your ideas of fun, come to the science talk. And then we move into Saturday morning, where we're going to be hosting a fun run. Should I hold these up? Is that helpful? No.
No, it's just too much glare right there.
Amy's holding up a white piece of paper.
So, Johnson Creek Fun Run, we've held a free fun run every year. We have a volunteer, Quentin Bauer, leading a group of any skill level. They'll have maps, so you can go at your own pace if you like, through a 4-mile loop, just to learn different ways of exploring the watershed. And
So will you just stop and give a little talks?
not this time. This time it's all running, but the map will include some information about the
okay.
locations that you go to. So
this is going to be, oh, there we go.
oh, great. Yes, Johnson Creek Fun Run.
And
So-
so this fun run now, is it going to be, you say a loop, is it going to be through the river area itself?
You meet at Pace Setters in the Woodstock area, and he'll take you through different segments of Selwood and parts of the
42nd.
Springwater Trail.
42nd Woodstock, there we are. All
So
right.
if you'd like to try it out, we can give you a copy of the